this computer. Okay, good. Now we've all got it. Okay, so Danielle is someone who's already registered for the fall training. Janice is someone who is considering the fall training. Stacy is my amazing assistant who helps me with all kinds of things, including the teacher training and including organizing the practicum. And then I thought Samuel was going to be on the call. He might come up a little bit later. Otherwise, he can just watch the recording. So what this call was originally about, well, and still is, but was about, Janice, just to catch you up, is that I canceled the spring training. I kind of had to make a decision about whether I should wait for enough people to sign up or to let people know, give people enough advance. It was the first time ever in 15 years, 27 teacher trainings that it didn't look like we were going to have enough people. So it was completely a surprise. We were in no way prepared for it because we've never had anything like that. I'm a little bit like this. I personally think that the reason it was canceled is because I needed to be here with my sister. And that if I would have been up on teacher training, I would be having my sister in the ICU and my nephew being schlepped from house to house to house. And I would just be up there on teacher training going, what is going on? So, maybe that's a little woo-woo. I don't know, but I totally believe that that's the reason the teacher training didn't happen, is because I needed to be here. That being said, I wanted the people who were registered. So there was a couple other people, but they don't need these pieces. They're IMT people. They've already done this work. But I wanted to offer it ended up just being Danielle and Samuel, I think. I wanted to offer them the opportunity to get some of the prerequisites or even post-requisites for teacher training done before the fall training. And the practicum is something that we don't ever do. Actually, that's not true. In all the years, we've actually had one or two people from the practicum prior to the 2-week residential. And usually that means they're like longtime students. We know them from the Samarya Center or something like that. So, but normally the practicum only happens after the 2-week. And so what I wanted to do was to make this available to the people who had registered for spring, to entice them to stay for the fall, but also so that they would be on the exact same time track as if they had taken the spring training and done the practicum. They would have finished at the fall. And so this way they are allowed and able to be on the exact same time track. So nothing time-wise has changed for them or pushed them out at all. And so this was a call to go over the practicum, because normally Stacy and I, or really Stacy, goes over the practicum in detail within the training. So
in my case, Molly, this would be after the 2-week.
This would be after the 2-week. However, and I think Stacy is still on here. She might be that little phone thing. Stacy and I have been, because of this, we've been talking about some other, are there any shifts? Like, is this a good time for us to reevaluate other possibilities for teacher training? Other ways we can make it more accessible to students? Ways that we can make it easier for people who are located in different remote places to be able to get the trainings done and all of that. And so I think that we're looking at some of that. So it's possible, Janice, that as we go through this, there actually might be some that you could also do ahead of time.
Could do it ahead. Okay.
So what I'd like to do is actually, and thanks to Stacy again, I'm working on a document on my website. On my website, if you wanted to become an IMT certified therapist, there's all this like very precise, like these are the things you have to do, and these are the prerequisites, and these are when they're happening, and but we don't have a similar thing for teacher training, even though teacher training is like shorter and easier. So Stacy suggested that I get that going up on the website, and I've been thinking about that for a long time. So I'm working on that, and so as I'm working on that, we're looking at some changes. And so what I'd like to do is right now, and it actually might sort of be on here. It is. So I'm going to share a little bit about what creates the whole 200 hours, and then talk about this practicum piece. And we won't be on the phone any longer than an hour total. So we'll definitely be off by 10 in case you're like, wait a minute, how long is all that going to take? Okay, so let's start just by looking at the practicum packet. It was here, in order to qualify for the designation of the 200-hour Yoga Alliance, you have to complete these components of the training. So I'm going to go over this, and then I'm going to tell you a little bit about some of the things that we've changed. And actually, even before that, just reminding folks that people don't have to become Yoga Alliance certified, and lots of people don't. And it's a voluntary registry, and people decide that they don't need that piece of it for whatever else they're doing. Either sometimes people are already yoga teachers, like Mari, who is on the spring training, for example. So she doesn't need this stuff because she's already registered. Sometimes we've had people that live in really remote areas, people who live on reservations, or people up in Alaska, that they're already hired by some place and they're not waiting for Yoga Alliance registration. And so it is a voluntary registry. And we talk more about that, especially on the training. But just for consideration, we're just going to make the assumption right now that everybody's going to get their 200-hour Yoga Alliance register. You're going to be able to register with Yoga Alliance and have that piece of paper that says you're a 200-hour certified teacher. So there's these 3 different components. And what I want to do first is just look at the middle one, the Samarya Yoga 2-week teacher training. So you are getting 125 of your hours right then and there. And so the rest of our training is making up the hours, but it's also making up, like, what is the training itself? What is the 2-week training? And then what are also the things that our students need to really round out who they are and to represent Samarya? So the Samarya 2-week training will definitely, it's a really deep dive into self. It's a deep dive into yoga philosophy and comparative mysticism, and looking at different contemplative practices from different religious traditions, so that people can feel like they can really feel connected to their own innate spirituality, and then let yoga be like a framework or a piece of that, especially for folks who already have a spiritual framework. Some folks really just want yoga to be their spiritual framework. So one of the things we pride ourselves on is the depth of knowledge and historical knowledge, and sort of the breadth of yoga philosophy in general, for folks who want that to be like sort of their primary thing. And then also just so that our teachers leave feeling like they can really guide students into yoga as a philosophical and spiritual discipline, but without in any way feeling like you're like proselytizing or you're like mission, like you don't really, how your students are receiving yoga is not, I don't want to say it's not important to you, but as Samarya in general, we're not really pushy. We don't think you have to be this or that. What we like to do is to be able to provide people an array of experiences from the yoga tradition. And so the 2-week residential does, I think, a phenomenal job of that. And then, of course, just to the very nuts and bolts, you absolutely get out of that training being able to teach a really solid yoga class. And the way we think of a yoga class is having like a little tiny Dharma talk at the beginning, and then being able to really skillfully sequence poses, to be able to look at the people who are in front of you in the room and decide what you want to do, shift your agenda so that you don't come in with this one agenda and then all of your students can't do anything that you're asking them to, but you just keep plowing forward. You've seen yoga teachers or others, do that. And so really your ability to shift and adapt as necessary. So as part of that too, we're really attuned to what kinds of people might be in the room, rather than that we need to for I don't know, larger where we need specific class if folks have some kind of something bodies, whether it's an amputee or whether someone who's struggling with a health issue or chronic pain or something like that, that we can offer those specialized classes. But as Samarya yoga teachers, you can also walk into a room and not be completely like thrown off by that and go, oh, look, that's just another human being with another like expression of a body and another expression of a life. And I can teach to that. And so, being able to put together really well sequenced asana, how to use hands-on touch, and then how to choose like readings or music. So it's just how to create a really full, complete class where the teacher feels really competent. So you definitely get out of the 2-week training with that. And then you also get out of the 2-week training with this really deeply heart-connected cohort from teacher training. And so that's been one of my great pleasures teaching in Seattle this weekend, was just seeing all of the students from the different teacher trainings coming together. So all of them having in common that they were all trainees, and then seeing like the little constellations of like, oh my gosh, we were on training together. Like that sort of connection really sticks. So that's what the 2-week really, really does. So it's just this really deep dive. And then it also has this really practical side, like you get out teaching yoga. Then there's the Samarya Yoga practicum. And what that is really is, okay, so now I know how to teach yoga. Or in this case, I have varying degrees of knowing how to teach yoga, but probably most people who come on teacher training are yoga enthusiasts of some sort of another. So the practicum is really more down to sort of like the nuts and bolts of you just really not so much thinking about all like the philosophical and the mystical kinds of implications, but really being able to be an observer and thinking about like how does this teacher sequence classes? How does this teacher use inclusive language? How does this teacher welcome students? And you just doing some of your own observation and feedback on those different things. And that it'll become more clear when we go through the whole packet. So different people also do the practicum in different ways. So for example, someone like Danielle or Samuel, for example, they both have Samarya trained yoga teachers like right there accessible to them. So they can watch those people's classes and potentially also then spend some time with the teacher afterwards. So let's say my friend Karen, who is connected to Danielle, I would imagine that Karen is invested in Danielle as well, right? So she might like watch, Danielle might be observing a class, and then afterwards her and Karen get to talk, and Danielle says, well, why'd you do this? Or I was curious about this. Or, maybe even Karen says, Danielle, why don't you try doing the beginning talk or something like that. So sometimes people have that opportunity, and that's totally great. All the way on the other end of the spectrum, like my students up in Alaska, for example, they have none of that opportunity. They can barely even find yoga teachers. And so what they do is on the other end of the spectrum, which is equally as valuable and equally as encouraged by that, is they're just attending yoga classes. They don't even necessarily have to tell the teacher that they're observing. So they're just attending the yoga class, but with the observer's mind, guided by these worksheets that I'm going to show you. And then after the yoga class, they just take, 10, 15 minutes on their own, whether it's when they go back at home or, in a coffee shop nearby or whatever, and filling out these observation sheets. So it's largely self-directed in terms of how you get those observation hours. And that will become more clear as we go through the packet. But I think of that row where it says Samarya Yoga Practicum, that's really like, now I'm really thinking about nuts and bolts of teaching and pretty much just that. And that's what that's for.
Molly, can I interject?
Of course.
I think I'm almost positive that you do actually talk to the teacher that you're observing from, because they sign the bottom of the sheet.
Right. Yes. Sure. So the teacher does sign. Absolutely. You're right, Stacy.
But I guess they don't ask questions. I guess you can, but it's not. Okay.
So basically, in that scenario, I think what people do is they we always encourage people, like, if it makes sense, it's nice to tell the teacher that you're taking the class, but you're also observing for your own teacher training, right? They can't tell you can't, right? Like, you're just taking the class. But so it's nice to let the teacher know that. And then at the end, but if for whatever reason, like, it just doesn't work out, maybe you're in New York City, there's, 500 people coming into that class, it's hectic, whatever, you also don't really have to make that connection. The only thing, like Stacy says, that you would have to do is just go up to the teacher afterwards and say, can you sign that I was in this class, right? And so that is the degree, that's like the minimal degree of connection that you have. We talk a lot about, I do a lot about like an IMT internship, and same with this. And one of the things I really pride our work on, and my work with Stacy on, is always asking, what is the point of this? Like, what is it that we want people to get out of this? We're not big on busy work. So we always want to think like, how is this helping our students? What is the goal of this particular thing? And then based on that goal, how can we work with our students and be as flexible as possible without ever watering down our program? So I think you'll always find that our program remains extremely robust, and yet at the same time, in anybody's life, there's these weird little mitigating circumstances that come up, and, I couldn't get this observation, or I wasn't able to get the teacher's signature. Like, it was so hectic after class, or I forgot, or whatever. And so we're like, okay, whatever, just write down the name of the teacher, because what we want is people to be good, right? We want you to be good, to feel connected to us, to feel connected to Samarya, to feel connected to your cohort, and to be a good yoga teacher. And as long as we keep moving forward in that direction, obviously we have systems, because systems are easy. If we've graduated a couple hundred students from this, right? We couldn't do that without systems. But systems are also there to create structure, not to create like unnecessary barriers. So the rest of the call, mainly we're going to go through the bulk of that practicum. What I do want to show you over here is the first column. Now, Stacy came up with something that I am like so excited about, and so is all of my staff, and I think you guys are really excited about this too. Hey there, Samuel. He's even representing in an unfold shirt. Fantastic. So we have our first column over here. And so this is what we call Samarya Yoga Foundations. And we had that as something that folks could take just as its own thing in order to be in some of our volunteer and outreach programs. And we rolled it into teacher training. We're making some changes to that right now that I think are really, really great. So the first one is that this IMT level 1, so like Danielle, this would be like really important for you, for example. And Janice, I can't recall where you are, but one of the things we're going to do is we're going to put the IMT, the entire adult level 1 is now going to live inside the 2-week residential training. So that creates one less weekend that you have to like try to prepare for, figure out how to get to, does it going to fit with your schedule, all of that kind of thing. Those of you that are on the IMT track, that just means that that's one of those trainings you already have down, and you can also get some of your mentoring hours on the teacher training. It no longer is like a separate thing. If you've already taken adult level 1, that's also not a problem, because you didn't take it with me. And no matter what you learned from other faculty, it's always great to hear these things from me, and also just with different dimension of different teachers. We chose to put the adult level 1 in there because it's the most like allowing like regular yoga teacher students to just be like that much of a way better yoga teacher, whether or not they're continuing on the IMT track, and that it's something else that they can, put on their own websites or in their own cards, is thinking about how they can do, we have to be very cautious with Yoga Alliance these days about anything with the words therapy or therapeutic, but how we can create like specialized yoga classes, or that we can work skillfully with particular conditions, that sort of thing. So this now goes away as an extra training. And then you also have yoga and social change. I love yoga and social change. I first started teaching that course in like 2007, I think. So about 10 years ago, because I felt like nobody was talking about what I would always call the low-hanging fruit, right? All these yoga people who already, I would say, you already put that sticker on the back of your Hummer that says the change you wish to see in the world. Or you're already wearing your t-shirt that's like namaste or whatever. So my idea was all of these people who already apparently are oriented towards doing good in the world, why aren't we further orienting them towards seeing how that like goodness in the world through their yoga teacher training, their love of yoga could be translated into real action, and real showing up and real manifestation of change in the world. So I started teaching that workshop. I still absolutely love teaching the workshop. And it is one that's hard for students to get if I'm the only one that's teaching it, and I'm only coming up from Mexico. Even if I did it once, or well, obviously once, but even if I did it twice a year, that means all my teacher trainees would have to wait on that one class for me. So we started to look at that too and say, well, maybe if we're making changes, that's another thing that we can change. So that will no longer be a specific requirement. Now, are you still with me so far? That still leaves then, so the IMT basics can be taken online. Samuel, you've already taken it. Danielle, you've already taken it. Janice, now I can't even remember if you were on the last one. But anyway, that can be taken online. So what we now have is 25, 35, 39. We've got about 40 hours. Our teacher training actually comes up to over 200 hours, a little over 200. But let's say if we just kept those same numbers, we have about 40 hours that we would then also need to make up to get the 200. So what we want to do is to make those 40 hours available to you in a variety of ways. So for example, just thinking of you guys who are on the phone, let's say like EB's doing like a yoga and anxiety series, and that's 22 hours or something. That would be one of our things that we would say, yeah, you can do that as part of those hours. So you can just do that thing with EB at home. Or like Danielle, let's say Karen was doing a workshop or something out in Montana, and we'd say, yeah, just take Karen's workshop. You can count that for your teacher training. So what we want to do is allow people to have more ability to take things in their own home, and or you can continue, there will be more things made available online. And so we'll send that out to you and let you know the list of all of the things that can make up those hours. But our hope is that that will make it much more accessible to students getting these hours in without waiting for the exact time that they're being offered. And then for many people having the additional expense of travel, plus the workshop, plus a place to stay, plus eating outside of their home and all of that. So it would hopefully overall decrease the cost that's associated with that as well.
I have a question.
Please, Danielle.
So I'm supposed to be attending a trauma-informed yoga training for teaching at the local jail. So it's through Yoga Behind Bars. They're coming to Missoula.
Oh, great.
And that's like in a few weeks. Would that be something that counts?
It would probably be something that counts. I think that you and I could talk about that.
Okay.
Specifically.
Sounds good.
This is why I say probably. On the one hand, like, yeah, it's Yoga Behind Bars, right? And it's informed yoga, and that all in many ways goes along with everything that Samarya has ever been about.
Mm-hmm.
The only reservation is that I often do find that, for example, even in students who do like trauma-informed yoga, I actually think some of the things, so this goes back to like, what is it that I want for my trainings to get out, my teachers to get out of the end of this,
right,
is also that they're really good and they have a certain way of thinking. And so let me even like break down for a moment just some of my thoughts about like trauma-informed yoga. I think the word trauma-informed yoga sounds great, right? And of course, we all want to be trauma-informed. And there's all different trainers with all different sort of orientations and ideas. And oftentimes what I have seen is that in people's attempt to be trauma-informed, they actually are projecting a lot of fragility onto their students.
right.
They're
I can do that.
projecting a lot of lack of capacity. They're actually being, in my mind, extremely paternalistic and being like, well, I know what's good for you because I took this 32-hour trauma informed.
Right.
Versus, but like, what is that person saying and how are we?
Right.
So we'll definitely be vetting the stuff, and it won't be kind of like a free for all. That being said, something like a trauma informed training with Yoga Behind Bars seems like something maybe we could do. And maybe what I would just do is, I know the people from Yoga Behind Bars. I've worked with them and for them before, in a very peripheral way.
Gotcha.
I've never done any Yoga Behind Bars training or anything like that. I just existed before Yoga Behind Bars, so I've sat on panels for them and that sort of thing. So Rosa Vissers is the woman, and I think I am going to be seeing her at Yoga Service Council conference. So we can talk about that, Danielle, because I think it would be as accessible as possible, but again, not just like that we would have to have a line in the sand somewhere.
Right. Sounds good.
You want to make that happen for you. So yeah, but that's an example, Danielle, of the kind of thing that I'm thinking that we're thinking about. Like, you could do the weekend street yoga training. We want to make sure that some large amount of it is with us.
Okay.
Okay. Samuel, are you all good so far? Janice, everybody good?
Good.
Okay. So now what we really want to do is we just want to look at this practicum piece so that you guys can go ahead and get started on this. So
Janice had to drop off, just so you know.
what'd you say?
Janice had to leave.
Oh, okay. Got it. So that's so great that we have this recording we can send out. Okay, so here's the booklet. Then we go, let's see. Okay, so then these are definitions. So we already looked at that. And we'll get a copy of this. And then we have practicum details. So students can begin the practicum only at the beginning of a semester and complete it within the semester. Semesters run November to April and May to October. So had you guys done the spring training, then you would be in the May to October cohort, right? But we're going to put you in the May to October cohort anyway. In other words, you can start now. The reason we do this is so that Stacy is not inundated with people that are like, oh, hey, I want to start my practicum today. And then she has to figure out, coordinate, work with that person, figure out their timing and all of that sort of thing. And then everyone's finishing at different times. Oh, hey, now I want my certificate. Oh, hey, can you check on my stuff? So we've been developing the practicum for over a decade. So it's really good, but it also really is, we feel like it's set up best for both the student, but also for administration, so that they're not like kind of driving themselves nuts with it. So that's why we only have 2 different starting times. And then they always have to complete within 6 months. So you have 6 months to complete your training, your practicum. So if you started it in May, then you would finish it in October. And you would get your certificate in October, and Stacy sends all the certificates out at once. So then in order to begin the practicum, the student would register and pay online 1 month prior. So that's what you guys would be doing, but your payment would be waived. So we would, I would make up a code today, so it kind of looks official, where you like actually register online, but then you'll put in a code that will make your payment to 0 for just the people from spring training. And then students wishing to apply for Samarya Yoga Mentorship and designation of a certified Samarya Yoga Teacher Training must complete the practicum within 1 year. So if you're planning on becoming like a certified Samarya teacher, you just have to complete the practicum within a year. So not everybody, let's say for example, we just had the spring training. Some people would say, I don't want to start in May. That's fine, but they have to start in November. They can't come back to us 3 years from now and say, okay, now I want to start practicum, right? So that's what that is about. And then all students wishing to receive their 200 Yoga Alliance designation with Samarya Yoga School must complete the practicum within 2 years of completing the residential training. So here we have 2 things here. We have, you're getting your Yoga Alliance certification. Everybody can get that. It's just you get the 200 hours and we're like, yeah, they trained with me. You send a thing into Yoga Alliance. They send a thing to me. Did you actually write the certificate? I say, yes, I did. Boom. They have their 200-hour Yoga Alliance. They trained with Samarya. Something that you guys can understand, but we didn't foresee in the very beginning, is that of all the hundreds of students I've trained, I don't think they're all that good. I don't know that I want them to all be like, yes, they all represent me in my work, right? You can understand that that makes sense, right? I did the best I could do of training them, and then they're whoever they are. So we really wanted to create a situation in which some people, everybody can be a 200-hour Yoga Alliance certified teacher. Some people are Samarya certified teachers, which means they end up on our website. They can link to our website. I link to their websites. We'll probably end up having like a closed resource page for certified Samarya yoga teachers in the same way we have for IMT practitioners. So there's this other level of people who have really stayed with us and really deepened in sort of that Samarya unfold way of thinking. So we wanted an option of that. And that's what this paragraph is talking about. And people don't have to decide on that right away. It's just knowing that there are sort of two different ways that we see students. Everybody can get their 200-hour yoga designation. Not everybody is going to be represented by the Samarya Center, by me on my website and be like, yes, I personally vouch for Danielle. I personally vouch for Samuel. And that's really what that's about. Does that make sense?
Yep.
It's just life. There are people I can say, I can personally vouch for the fact that they showed up at my training. Right. End of story. Okay. So important dates to remember then. I don't think we need to go through these in great detail, but they're basically just time frames for people. So the spring practicum, you're registering and paying by April 25th. That's you guys. Spring practicum before May 15th. Schedule a 30-minute phone call with practicum coordinator to review packet and requirements. You won't have to do that because we're doing it right now. So you don't have to worry about that. And then start to figure out where you're going to get your class observations. This is just, this is a suggested guideline so you can stay on time. Then when you're beginning your observations, it says you can begin your observations sooner, which is what you guys will be doing. Then down here we have this thing of conference calls. Now the conference calls are optional, but what they are is we offer them I think we offer them twice a month. And so since the practicum is largely self-directed, you have the option of calling into these conference calls twice a month, and you've got a Samarya teacher on the other end of that call, and you're going, so I saw this weird thing happen in class, or I had this thought about class, or there was a woman next to me in class, like whatever it is, and the Samarya teacher's on the other end, giving you their perspective. And you're also gaining from questions and perspectives of other students who are calling in on the conference call. So that's something that we offer to create support during the practicum. I will tell you that not all students avail themselves of that. So they don't get on the conference calls and they just go all the way through. So it's not mandatory, but they're there for you. And we encourage students to do them. And students who are going to apply for mentorship or want to continue and become a certified Samarya yoga teacher, they then you are required to be on a certain number of them, 50% of the conference calls. So if you're thinking, well, no, I definitely want to be a certified Samarya yoga teacher, I want to go that route, then you want to try to make 50% of those calls, which is hopefully a low enough bar to get on a phone call that it's reasonable.
And if I can interject,
Please do.
we usually offer, even though your practicum is only 6 months, we offer you to come in on the phone calls for an entire year. So you can get it. You should be able to get in those phone calls. Makes it even that much easier.
Oh, thanks, Stacy. Yeah, great point. So you can still, get on the calls even after you've finished your practicum. We send out the dates. So there are all the dates of the conference calls, and obviously they're not in there yet. So that's something that I'll have to, we'll have to schedule. Stacy and I will get on that and get some conference calls going, as soon as you guys get started. And then by October 15th, you're handing in all of your materials. So your practicum checklist, the fact that you've, filled in the other requirements and whatever, you give them to Stacy by October 15th. And then on October 31st, she will send you a certificate that says you are a 200-hour Yoga Alliance yoga teacher. And then you go ahead and submit that in. And then they send me an email and saying, did you write this? And I say, yes, I did. And then that's the end of that. Okay, so that's the timeline. Does the timeline make sense? And again, like you'll have access to this and you have access to us. It's one of the things we pride ourselves with Samarya. Like we're very engaged. As I keep saying to my 13-year-old nephew who I'm here supporting, I keep going, I don't want to be all up in your grill, but I'm just going to be back no matter what. I don't want to be in your grill, but I got your back. And so that's what I want to say to you guys too. Like, I don't want to be all up in your grill. And at the same time, like we totally have your back. That's part of our Samarya way. It's not like this, like sort of remote, like, oh, these yoga students out there, like we're up in your grill. Okay. So this is a narrative from practicum requirements. I'm not going to read this all verbatim because you'll have it, but it consists of observing or assisting 24 yoga classes and teaching 4 community classes, which would total around 36 hours. For each of the 24 classes, the students will complete a worksheet and have it signed by the teacher at the end of the class. For the 4 community classes, students must provide verification of the location and the date of the classes taught. So you just hand in, well, there's a page on here that you'll see, but you'll say, I taught it in my home on this particular date. I taught it at Unfold on this date. I taught it at O Therapy Services on this date, whatever.
Cool.
Some expectations of the practicum students. Just making sure that you're representing well. So you're showing up, in a timely manner, you're looking well groomed, you're in appropriate professional yoga attire. And we put in there, this need not be anything fancy, simply yoga type pants, a clean shirt, appropriate underclothing. I like to say to people that anything you ever see in writing at the Samarya Center is because we've seen people do the opposite. So we assumption like anyone would know this, right? So the only reason we would write this is because of the shit we've seen people do. So this means no underwear showing, and nothing that is under shirts or pants should be visible in any way.
Oh boy.
Okay, right? But somebody made us write that down. Following the lead of the host teacher, the practicum should greet and welcome students and make an effort to learn students' names. So this would only be like Samuel or Danielle if you're like working with a teacher, you're working with someone at Unfold or you're working with Karen. Obviously, if you're you're going to like some Jiva Mukti class in New York City, you're not going to be like, oh, hey, hi, everybody, welcome to Jiva Mukti. Class, right? So this is like within reason for the exact setting. Practicum students should not add anything during the class with the students regarding their practice unless specified by the teacher, right? So that's just like, let's say you are with EB, you are with Karen, like you're with someone you really know, and then all of a sudden you're like, oh, I'll just interject into what Karen just said. So we're saying like, that's not your role at this time unless the teacher says, what do you think about that, Samuel? You're not adding anything.
Okay.
I just meant Samuel as an example. Samuel, don't you add anything. Okay. Because the Samarya Yoga practicum is completely self-directed, you might find a wide variety of expectations and allowances from the teacher who choose to let you complete your observations with them. And so we talked about that. Some you would just pay as a drop-in student and you basically have nothing to do with them except for signing. Others will waive your fee. Others will be like, not only am I waiving your fee, but I want you to teach a couple of sun salutations. So you're just sort of open to like what those possibilities are. But the only actual requirement of the teacher is they sign and date your sheet. And that's what Stacy just referred to. And you have the opportunity to discuss more detailed feedback at the practicum support conference calls. Completion of the practicum, you submit all the 24 worksheets and the 4 community classes. Let's say we understand that there may be times when a student might not be able to complete all the observations. Although it's our hope that you would observe all the classes, we know that sometimes life gets in the way. Because our training is slightly over 200 hours, there's some ability to miss an observation. So you can miss up to 12 hours in total and still receive your certificate. Okay, so that's just some leeway for folks. And we like to realize that life is actual life. And then you're entered into our database, and the certificates are sent out twice a year. So this is just sort of your worksheet, but we'll have to update this worksheet. This is the practicum packet we have right now, and we'll go ahead and send this to you so you can get started. But Stacy and I will have to update this page, right? Because it will no longer be attend the yoga and social change workshop. It will say like the central social change workshop or other approved, whatever. IMT Basics, you guys have both taken that. For folks who haven't taken that, if they're listening to this, you will take that online. And you'll say the date that you did that. Any level 1 workshop, that will now go away. However, I'm just thinking that someone like you, Samuel, you've already taken a level 1. Daniel, have you already taken a level 1?
No.
So Samuel, you'll have already met that requirement. We won't change that for you. You won't need some other thing. Okay, so you'll have already met that. For you, Danielle, and anyone else that's listening on the call, that one piece right there, it won't anymore say level 1 workshop. It will have the equivalent hours, and we'll give you what the options for those equivalent hours are.
Cool.
Is that okay? Clear?
Mm-hmm.
All right, great. And then 4 additional hours of anatomy study, and your practicum checklist. So that's just kind of something for you to keep track. And then these are just lots of things for you to keep track. And then these are your observing and assisting documentation. So it just observe, assist in 24 classes of your choice, and you fill out the observation notes. And then literally it's going to just be class 1, 2, 3, all the way up to 24. And so you're saying class 1, April 15th, 2017, it was a vinyasa flow class with, Karen. Class 2 was an acro yoga class with Rachel, just like that. That's what this one is about, just you kind of tracking. Your community class documentation also tracking. So you are saying the days, the location, type of class, a very brief bulleted class plan. I was going to talk about ahimsa. I was going to do basic vinyasa flow and some shavasana or whatever. Summary of the student feedback. It was all my family, and they said that it was awesome, except for my 12-year-old nephew who told me that my breath stunk. I really liked it. I loved my talk, but I realized I didn't know what to do when this one person started vomiting in the middle of class. Or whatever. Right? So it's just, this is really our way. It's that little extra thing that you actually taught these classes, right? So we don't want it to be a huge amount of homework for you. It's just our extra sort of like, they must have taught these classes if they can say these things about it, right? Mm-hmm. And we do provide you with a feedback form, and that's in there. So those are your 4 classes, end of requirements. Okay. Next, page 11, we provide you with your student feedback form. So when you teach your community classes, at the end of the class, because you're saying to people, this class is free because I'm a new teacher. So at the end of the class, I'm going to hand you this piece of paper, and this is all you have to fill out. One thing you loved about the class, teacher, or teaching, and one thing that could be strengthened. That's it. So someone's like, what I loved about it is I loved how genuine Danielle was. One thing that could be strengthened. People say all kinds of stuff. So just allow people to say whatever. Sometimes they're like nothing. Sometimes they're like, it could have been strengthened if the music wasn't so loud. And you're like, well, yeah, we took care of that right in the middle of class. Or people say it could have been strengthened if that fire engine hadn't disturbed our shavasana. And you just, whatever. Like, people are people, and they say that kind of shit. And you're like, okay, whatever. But you also have to be open to that. They would say it could be strengthened if, Molly had better planned her reading, or she could slow down her pace. And so you're just thinking like, that's fine. That's just feedback, right? If it's feedback that's good, I'll take it. If it seems irrelevant, I'll let it go. All right. So we just provide that for you so you can hand those out. No practicum will be extended for any reason, blah-de-blah-de. Recommended, but not required. So these are just other things that are sort of strengthening when you're a Samarya certified teacher, that you're attending classes that are instructed by Samarya trained teachers, that you're able to be on those practicum support calls. Then we have other resources. Maggie Karshner, I just saw this weekend. She's a longtime supporter of Samarya Yoga. She used to be our director of operations for several years. She knows Samarya Yoga in and out. And she has now built her own profession that is supporting yoga teachers to grow and like brand themselves and market themselves. And she always hosts one of the conference calls, and she also always comes to teacher training. So you'll meet her on teacher training. You'll also see her on a conference call, and then it's someone that you might choose to to do some additional work with. And then we also just give you an option for liability insurance. And again, you might have your own liability insurance, you might have other ideas, whatever, but we just give you a resource there. Some logistics. Let's just move. I mean, you can read those. It's a lot of, we try to be very clear, so sometimes it might feel redundant. So let's go to guidelines with working with the teachers. Why don't you guys read through that on your own? I don't feel like that's the most important thing for us with the time left. Really, this is again just saying more about if you happen to be working with a teacher, then what are some things you can kind of talk about with them ahead of time, like preferred communications or when they're going to be able to give you feedback. Sometimes this is a moot point, right? Again, we have lots of students who actually do stellar in practicum, but they've never really had like one consistent teacher or anything like that, just because of where they live or whatever. The practicum student's role, example teaching activities. I'm just going to let you read through those on your own. This is what is most important for us to do in the 5 or so remaining minutes. This is what the worksheets look like. So let's say there's anywhere on the continuum from like Samuel, you're like doing a class with Lee or EB, and you already know like they're going to talk to you afterwards. They said they'd take 15 minutes with you. Awesome. All the way to the other end of you're literally, you're in Seattle for a day, you're in Billings for a day, you walk in, you take the class, the teacher signs off, that's it, right? So at either end of that continuum, what you would do then is sit down for a few minutes and, name all of that. And that this particular day, so you would want to know ahead of time when you were going in to observe the class, you'd say, today I'm observing the whole class. Every time you're observing the whole class. But what I'm having my mind on today is welcoming. And so please write one paragraph that describes how this teacher provided a genuine sense of welcoming and community building within this class, right? So you might say, like if it was me, you'd say, they had everybody, turn and say hello to the person next to them on the mat and just get a sense of who is practicing around them. And they use students' names and whatever, and that provided a sense of welcoming. You might imagine, let's again say you're in New York City at a Jiva Mukti class with 200 students. You might say, what I noticed is that this teacher gave no sense of welcoming. They never said like hello to everybody. They just basically came in 2 seconds before class was going to start and just went for it. And I noticed that. And that's not going to be my way of teaching, but that's what I saw. So we can, without criticizing others, we can gain equally valuable information by seeing what someone did not do, right? So that's just what this is. And then other observations, physical. Name one observation you made of the practice or teaching on a physical level. So that could either be, you could say something like, oh, the teacher gave excellent physical cues for how to be in fierce pose. Or you could say, I noticed when I was in fierce pose, I never noticed how much my, low back curves, like whatever. It's just putting you into that observing frame of mind. Okay, so then the same thing, breath. One observation you made of the practice or teaching at the level of the breath or prana. So it could either be something the teacher said or did, or it could be something you experienced. Okay, and so on, energy, emotional, and other notes. Teacher signature, done. And then they just go on. So now your next time you're going in, you're specifically thinking about language. So when you go in, you do the observation with and whoever and wherever you're doing it, with thinking about the language of the teacher. So on and so forth. I'm thinking about speaking. I'm thinking about breath. I'm thinking about decision making. Okay, so you're looking at the observation sheet ahead of time to put your mind in that mindset. And then they go all the way through. You've got 24 of these.
And that's it. It's just the observations.
Okay, thanks, Stace. Yeah, and then there you go. That's just all the observation forms. So for just Danielle and Samuel, for anybody who's watching this or listening to this, this is what the practice is about. And this is what you will be doing when you complete teacher training. for Samuel and Danielle, these are now what you can get started on pretty much right away. We will send you this in a PDF form. And then you can print it. I think we have an option for us to send you a printed version. I think we have an extra fee if we're going to send you the printed version. Otherwise, you print it down. And you can go ahead and get started. So like the very next yoga class that you go to, if you'd like, you can say, okay, this class, I was actually going to go to class tonight anyway at 5:30, and hell, I'm going to focus on welcoming, and I'm going to fill out this observation form, right? So you can get going.
Beautiful.
Any questions or concerns or clarifications? And obviously you can always think it through and email me or Stacy. You don't have to have anything right now, but if there's anything that's burning right now or unsure right now, let me know.
Not at the moment.
Okay.
Nope.
All right.
I just want to throw one thing out there.
Yeah.
So for the YTT, there's a required reading and there's a suggested reading. And I just think it might be helpful if you're not, you now have like 6 months before the YTT comes, but if you could be maybe doing some of that reading while you're doing your practicum, it might help connect you.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's just a thought.
I think that's a great thought.
That's a really, really good thought, Stacy. And it also makes things not feel so like pressed for time. So people have time to really get that ready before training. Other suggestions I would give are, if you have my book, if you're able to read my book or portions of the book, that's going to give you a real like sort of leg up in thinking about these different aspects of yoga philosophy. If listening is easier for you, a lot of the things in the book are podcasted. So you can listen to them over podcast. So you can like listen to them while you're driving instead of reading. And then another thing that we have to set up with Stacey's suggestion is I already did, I think, 4 or 5 of these things that I call quick and dirty yoga philosophy. So they're little 20-minute YouTube videos. And if you want to watch those ahead of time before teacher training or while you're doing your observations, they'll also orient you. They'll prepare you for training. And then one of the options that we're going to have for hours that you can complete is that anyone can listen to those publicly, or we can send you a little like, I hate to use the word quiz because I'm just not big into like quizzing and testing, but we'll feed you like a little like feedback thing. So say you listen to the thing on the koshas, then you say, I want to use this for one of my hours, for my additional hours. So we'd say, yeah, you can use that for an hour. You're just going to have to pay this small amount, which we don't know what it is yet, because what we want to do is have the total amount be the same for everybody at the end. And then give us this feedback form. So don't even worry about that right now. I guess what I would say is anyone can benefit from watching those YouTube videos. And I think I only have like 5 of them so far, and they're only 20 minutes each.
Cool.
And they'd be really helpful as well.
Molly, could you say again, quick and dirty, what is the total name of it?
It's called Quick and Dirty Yoga Philosophy. And
Okay.
if you just go to my
you.
YouTube channel, they're all there. And I'll try it, and even while I'm up here in Seattle, I'll see if I can get some done.
All right.
They're fun. And they really are quick and dirty. Like I get my husband I'm turning on the video. I promised them not to be over 20 minutes. So I set my timer there, and I just like write and talk, and then I don't edit them. And I just put them into this format and then send them out. But most of the stuff that I know, I've been teaching and talking about this stuff for so long that I know it up and down. And what I think is great about these is all of these things we're going to talk about on teacher training in depth. But what this does is allow people to already be, when you show up at teacher training, we're like, okay, today we're going to be talking about the kleshas, for example. You're like, okay, I already know a little bit about that. So now it's going to be very easy for me to absorb this more in-depth information, as opposed to being like, teacher training is intensive. It's like a lot of information coming at you. And so it's a really nice way just to kind of like ground yourself in some of the information ahead of time. I'm going to stop share so I can see your faces all big again. Hi. Hi. Now all right. So if you have any other questions or anything at all, just contact me and Stacy. Really pretty good about getting back to people in a timely manner. I would just say I should put an autoresponder on right now. But generally speaking, because of my sister's health and the imminency of her disease, I sometimes I'm a little longer than normal, but a little longer than normal means like 3 days instead of 1 day. So just know that if I don't respond to you right away, I can't, I'm like, I don't know, I'm at the hospital or I'm otherwise whatever. So one thing you could do is if there's
Okay.
something that comes up and you're like, I need this information, just put that in the subject line, say, please respond. And then just give me like the one little thing, and then just recognize that I'll respond by going, sure, that sounds good. Instead of going, hey, Samuel, so great to hear from you. Hope everything's going good in Portland, right?
Yeah.
So, okay,
Right.
awesome. Well, thanks everybody. And,
Thank you.
Thank
and
you.
I'll have this recording available for you. And otherwise, we're actually in person available to you. All right.
Awesome. Have a
Great.
good day, guys.
Thanks a lot.
Have a great day.
Bye.
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 Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.